Good afternoon, 49er faithful. Welcome to another episode of Monday Afternoon Quarterback. I am your host, as usual, Rob Schuh. Today is a joint episode where we are doing both the visual here on YouTube, and there will be a podcast version of this as well with my co-host here, Randon McMahon, who represents the Genuine Draft Media Group. You will be able to find that podcast on Genuine Draft SF. Randon, how are you doing this Monday afternoon, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, man. It's obviously a heartbreaking loss, and we'll get into that. But as far as me personally, I'm doing great, man. Worked out this morning, got the endorphins running. Got my shopping done for the week. I think I've been liking, it's been getting colder, so a little bit more fun ramen. So I'm gonna try to do like I bought some top ramen, and then I'm gonna try to spruce it up with my own ingredients.
There you go.
And try to do like a little makeshift experience.
Yes, ramen, now you're talking my language. I also had to get the natural endorphins running today. I was feeling down, man. I'm not going to lie. You may hear it in my voice. I certainly lost it a little bit yesterday at the game. Drove up to Seattle, was there, had great seats. It was phenomenal in that regard, and just not the game I was looking for, not the end result I was looking for, not the performance I was looking for, and not the emotional lift I was hoping for. So yes, it's been a day that's been challenging in getting myself back to some level of positivity. I always like to view things from a glass half full perspective. It's just healthier for me. It was more challenging to do that today.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird game, and it was just kind of like you just saw so many moments of us being there to win it, and then it was just kind of a weird game in general, which we'll get to.
Yes, we will. I'm excited to talk about it, even though it was an unpleasant experience, but one that I'm still grateful to be a part of. I will say this for any of the faithful that are feeling down, that are having a tough time today, that it truly is those lower moments in life that make the better moments that much more special. You only have the delta, the difference between those two moments, those two experiences, in order to really, truly understand what you should be grateful for in life. People who have never gone through adversity, have never faced challenges, faced negativity, and have always had positive things happen in their life may not have the correct level of gratitude for that positivity. Me personally, when I look at all the humbling and emotionally tough losses that I have been a part of with this 49ers organization, especially over the last 20 years, I just know that whenever they win that next Super Bowl, it's going to be that much sweeter because of it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, as a fan base, it's always tough. And I know for you drove up there, and when you like watching your team lose in person is brutal, because like you spent all that money, you made it a day. It's supposed to be an experience. Like you said, you got you get tickets. You're also in enemy territory, so like You're probably talking, mad shit or whatever. So I apologize. You're talking a lot of smack in the stands and stuff, and just to have it end like that was just kind of brutal for you. And I know I've had that multiple times going in. I remember on my 30th birthday, I flew out to LA because I'm an LA Kings fan, and I saw 3 games on the weekend. They went 0 for 3.
Oh.
And I flew out there. I spent the whole weekend there. I got good seats. It was just like that just obliterates you as a fan when you go on the road and you just can't seem to get the W.
Yes, it is tough. Thankfully, I am a fairly respectful fan when I'm in other people's houses, and so everyone that was in my section was fairly humble when they started the game, because I don't think they expected much from their Seahawks team. I think they expected a loss, and then I was respectful because that's how I am as a fan. So when the tides turned, it was still a reasonably positive experience. It wasn't until leaving the stadium when I bumped into fans that had no idea I'm a positive, kind individual that threw insults my way or had to put up with that Seahawks chant, which I just can't for the life of me get behind. But let's break down the entirety of this one. It was a complete loss, a complete team loss from start to finish. I know that fans will want to quickly jump on Jimmy Garoppolo because he is a polarizing topic, and we'll hit that a little bit later in this broadcast. But to me, it was all three phases that suffered in this. Certainly the defense performed best of the three phases, but the offense could not get going, could not stay going, and was only consistent in spurts. And the special teams was really, really atrocious, worse than it was the week prior against the Minnesota Vikings, or in the game against the Minnesota Vikings. How did you see it breaking out with that complete team loss on Sunday, Randon?
Yeah, the title just says itself, and I think a lot of people, want to use that. Well, Jimmy just wins games, right? And I always say that winning is a team stat, and so are losses at some points, right? So, especially in this game, you look at the Vikings game where Jimmy didn't play his best, and the team picked him up, and we ended up winning that game. This time, the team didn't really. There was a lot of bad. So the run game was ineffective. The pass game was inconsistent. We had 3 turnovers. The special teams was atrocious. The cornerbacks after Mosley just got beat left and right. I think we got outcoached. And so like you look at Ryan's tried to make an impact by blitzing more in the second half. And then Wilson started beating us for slants. We had over 10 penalties, and then we gave up a safety. And, that goes into the coaching call as well. Like we're right there in the end zone. And I was like, okay, like, yeah, you want to get out of there, but do we really want to risk a pass on third down that close, especially out of the shotgun? So if one player gets beat, which Compton got destroyed, it's instant safety, where we could have just ran the ball and said, hey, we'll play the field position game. Let's run the ball and just punt it. And because Wishnowsky has a pretty good leg. So there was a lot of stuff that I think went into that loss. And, it's hard for me to point one thing or the other. Everybody wants to say Jimmy's making, 20 something $million. So the
right
brunt, but Shanahan's one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL. DeMeco Ryans is another good coach. I know it's his first year. You have a lot of veteran players. So I think the blame can go blanketed across the entire team there.
I think so too. To me, it does start at the top. I have to say that I was not impressed by the game plan as I saw it. With Deebo Samuel out, it appeared to me that you would need to get even more creative in the way in which you designed the run game in order to be effective. It seemed clear going into this game that Seattle would attempt to stuff the run and may be able to do so pretty effectively, judging by the fact that they had held teams to a 3.9 yard average per carry prior to this matchup. So it struck me as something you knew going in. I expected to see, when Deebo was out, that we would have several other players contribute in similar ways to try and make up for what Deebo was bringing to the run game. I expected to see a carry or two for Brandon Ayuk. I expected to see a carry or two for Jawan Jennings. And the idea that we saw none of that leads me to question what type of a game plan we came in with. And then the game gets off to a horrible start. Very tough to state the effect of a player getting a scary injury the way in which Trenton Cannon did on the very first play of the game. Brings back bad memories of the Navarro Bowman injury. We have had some brutal losses in Seattle, some brutal physical matchups. And I'll tell you, it took the air out of the stadium for both sets of fans. It was an uncomfortable silence during that. It was, the cart came on the field. Oh, the cart's off the field. Maybe he was okay. Oh, no, an ambulance is coming on the field.
Yeah.
And that levels the amount of fear for the players. And so to try and recover from that and play a physical game, I'm sure was difficult. The 3 and out gave the 49ers life, but then it wasn't 3 and out because it was a freaking fake punt for a 80-yard touchdown run that skews Seattle statistics for the run game. So it just started poorly and snowballed from there. It never felt like the 49ers had the appropriate amount of confidence they should have playing a subpar Seattle team.
And I wonder how much that came into it, right? So your teammate gets injured severely. Ambulance comes on. You get a 3 and out, so maybe you're feeling high. Maybe they weren't expecting the fake punt, but it happened, touchdown, right? So then you get kicked in the mouth emotionally. You get a little bit high, then you get low again. But I got to give them a positive. They did come back in the first half and end up going into the second half with a lead after having those 2 really negative things happen right away in the game. Like they rebounded fairly well. And I like to throw out my positives as much as the complaints, even in losses. So
Yes, you have to throw out the positives because it is irrational to just focus on the negatives. This team is 6-6. They are not 0-6. They are capable of putting up some pretty impressive games. When things go right for the 49ers, they oftentimes go very right. I think I would have to agree, at least in what I'm seeing initially, this comment that Chris Royal brings in here. Chris, by the way, came up and introduced himself at the game. Fantastic to meet Chris in person. Thank you for the super chat as well. It was a tale of two halves. And Randon, you just acknowledged that in fact, we did lead going into halftime and then fell quite short afterwards. Chris continues, not the outcome we wanted, but it was a damn good to meet you in person, good sir. It was a damn good game and good to meet you in person, good sir. I would agree on both counts. It was a good game. It was not the outcome that I wanted there, but it was damn good to meet fellow 49er faithful. It was good to share that experience. There were a lot of hopeful fans in the stands right around me. It was a lot of red and gold, and that's always uplifting, especially in a tough loss.
Yeah, you gotta meet more of the fans. It's good.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's move that forward to our second topic here, which is, it was a complete team loss, but it comes against a team that loss just feels like so much more. It feels so much heavier because it was Seattle. And part of that comes from the fact that this is not a good Seattle team. This is a Seattle team that could be riding the last year of a dynasty, that could be saying farewell to a lot of these faces that have demolished the 49ers, quite frankly, over the past 10 seasons or so. Why? Why does it feel so much more painful? And what is it about this Seattle team where they have the 49ers number in the way in which they do?
I think you should throw up Jason Walsh's comment, because that's what it felt like. He felt like he got stabbed watching that game, because it just, with just the fact that they've dominated us for the longest time. I think we have 4 total wins against them in my watching lifetime. I mean, I'm in my 30s, and it just seems rough, And then games always come down to the end, whether positive, negative. I mean, we had the shutdown by Greenlaw. We've seen countless times Russell Wilson throwing a touchdown in the fourth quarter. This time it was in the third quarter to put them ahead and take us out of the game. It just seems unnatural how many times we lose to this team, and the rivalry we're supposed to get the better of them too, and like it doesn't seem like it happens very often, and outside the magical season of 2019, and so it's just painful when that, especially this time, that we should have beat them in both games, or we had a chance to beat them in both games and go 0-2 on the season. I think you could have lived with this game or this loss if we won at home, but going 0-2 on the season on both 2 winnable games, it just seems a little brutal.
Would you agree with AJB here, who says Kyle got outcoached by an outgoing coach? I tend to think yes. I tend to think, again, with what I saw for the 49ers run game plan, that we did not come into this game with the correct mindset, that we allowed Seattle to really dictate how we played this game. And so I give credit to Pete Carroll in that respect. Is that your observation as well, or do you have a different take on that?
I don't know. I think could be something to say between the play calling itself and then the execution of said plays. I do think that the fact that the run game wasn't innovative enough, like they solely rely on Deebo for the innovation, that couldn't happen. Like you said, could there have been another player? Could they have ran 2 running backs out there and put Jeff Wilson in the slot and have him run in motion, and do some trickery that way, or have some other wide receivers like Jennings? Like, I think that should have been at least in the discussion. I mean, they only had Kittle run 1 time, and so I just wonder if there wasn't enough innovation in his mindset. Like, he was like, okay, we should go out there and be able to run it down their throats with just Elijah Mitchell. There's no need for some trickeration.
Right.
And just maybe the hubris, which Kyle has been known to have, it was the downfall of his offensive mind in this game.
Which is so strange to me in that with Deebo out, you would think that it would have spurred him to go the opposite direction, that it would have increased his desire to create these creative game plans in order to attack Seattle in that way. And that this execution just showed a lack of creativity. It really did. It was highly disappointing to me in that respect. And I can't get past the fact that we came out and allowed a lesser team to really dictate how we played. And it ended up benefiting the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, again, credit to them. I don't want to take anything away from Seattle in the way that they played, but it did feel as if the 49ers continued to shoot themselves in the foot. And part of that was the initial game plan to me. In looking at a couple of super chats that have come in, we've got Milf Hunter with Emmanuel Mosley out 4 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. I had not heard that update yet today. That's a big loss for the 49ers. The secondary has been thin to this point, and that's probably an understatement. To lose E-Man now, to be out 4 to 6 weeks with what you saw from Lenoir yesterday, and the fact that he got pulled after being targeted several times against DK Metcalf. Are we looking at an extended stretch of Dante Johnson?
I think, yeah, it's going to be pretty hard. It's going to be pretty brutal there. And a lot of people don't really give credit to how well D'Amico Ryans has been playing and they've been executing. I think in advanced stats before this game, they were top 10 in DVOA per play. So as far as the defensive passing, which has been a lot better than the run game. But I mean, it's a carousel of bad corners coming up for the other side. And what you saw with how good, like you saw it in 2019 with Sherman, even though he wasn't at the peak of his athletic ability,
right.
He took away half the field in fear. Like, I don't think people are
respect.
I don't think people are like fearful of Mosley, but he's competently a starting corner.
Correct.
And so when you see Norman and now Lenoir and all these other people on the other side, Pete Carroll did a good job. Like, okay, I have a quarterback that can throw anywhere on the field. I have 2 wide receivers. No matter who Lenoir is on, we could take advantage of him. And they targeted him hyperly. And then Deontay Johnson is going to be the same way. So it's good. I mean, you look at the matchup next week with the Bengals and the wide receivers they have on their team. We play the Rams again. Like, there's going to be a lot of teams where they can maybe perhaps have their way, especially in man coverage, since we do that a lot on third down. Maybe it's going to be D'Amico Ryan's going to have to earn his paycheck and scheme up some looks that maybe they're not familiar with and call the games of his life for our pass defense to be effective.
Yeah, to look up at Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd on the schedule next. Ouch. That really does hurt. That's going to be a great test, though. And so I am optimistic in that regard that it will be a good test for this secondary and it will prove just what we're made of for the rest of this stretch, because there really aren't going to be reinforcements arriving. We have who we have at this point. Our next super chat coming in from Manila Kid. Kyle and Jimmy sucked. They need to be accountable. I can't dispute either of those claims. I think that Kyle, I was highly disappointed in. Jimmy as well. On Jimmy's level, I guess I'm not terribly surprised with the level of play and what we saw yesterday. I think that's what I've come to expect from Jimmy Garoppolo is inconsistent play, and that he does struggle at times in throwing the ball to the other team and making poor decisions, but we'll balance that out with some pretty phenomenal plays at times. And I thought that was the case yesterday, although I would put that performance, below average for Jimmy Garoppolo, but it didn't shock me. The game plan was a bigger shock for me, and then the rest of the team really letting down the 49ers was to me, the root of the loss. Is that a fair statement in your book?
Yeah. I mean, Jimmy is who I thought he was. I mean, he's inconsistent, and we're going to talk about that later. And Kyle the thing about Kyle is he shows a lot of great games. And then sometimes he just has these flops, and maybe coaches have bad games too. But I think the failure to adjust or realize the weakness of a team and capitalize on said weakness is something that he doesn't do consistently, and I feel like that is maybe his downfall as a head coach.
That's a fair criticism. All right, let's shift gears and talk a bit about the 49ers run game.
Yeah.
The 49ers have been running uphill. Now, in previous matchups where they were able to get above 30, above 40 carries per game, it didn't really seem to matter that they were averaging 3.5 or 3 yards per carry or less in some of those games. We had another matchup where Elijah Mitchell continued to plod into 8-man boxes. I believe went up against the most 8-man boxes of any running back on Sunday, but averaged just 3 yards per carry over the contest. Without Deebo Samuel in there to raise up that average and to add in some explosive runs, you had 1 carry for George Kittle for 5 yards and 2 for 0 yards from Jimmy Garoppolo. So the average yards per carry in that game stayed low because it wasn't balanced out by any other trick plays. There was no creativity coming out of Kyle Shanahan. Do you see that as a problem going forward? Teams now have this recipe for playing the 49ers if they choose to use it, which is stack the box and force Jimmy Garoppolo to beat you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a problem in our last podcast that we talked about, or my last show or time on the show. And I think their offensive style, like their running attack, could be symbolized in like death by 1,000 cuts. And they were this way. The same thing with Mozart on the team before they were utilizing Deebo in the run game, or I guess they were doing sweeps and stuff back then too. But you just get cut here, and eventually one will hit a vital spot, and it'll be a house show. But I haven't seen many house runs from Elijah Mitchell or any running back. Most of them have been from Deebo, and so like to me, it's like, are we getting? Elijah Mitchell's doing a great job for what he is, and we're still top 5 in the league, or top 6 in the league in rushing yards per game. And so I like panicking. Teams are allowed to have bad games. Players are allowed to have bad games. So that's still, doesn't exclude Elijah Mitchell. But the fact that the longest rush play of the game was 9 yards, we didn't get creative in any other way. We were still plotting against 8-man boxes. I think the execution there was just poor, and the game plan was poor. But like I said, we're still, or I guess 7th in the league based on the stats I just looked up. 7th in the league at 126 yards per game. So we're still doing a great job overall in the season. It was just, like I said, piss poor game plan, and then also the execution wasn't great. If I were to ask you this question based on rush yards per game, who would you think would be number 1 in the league right now?
In rush yards per game, I mean, my guess would have to be the Baltimore Ravens based on just how much they run the ball and with Lamar Jackson.
It's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Interesting. Jalen Hurts carrying a bit of that average, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so you have Hurts as the 11th rusher on the season, and Sanders, as much as he gets crap, is 21st. So I think it's interesting if you look at the top 5, and I'll throw this to you. You have a couple teams that have quarterback run helpers, like in Baltimore and Philadelphia.
Right.
Then you have Indy. Tennessee is still top 5, even with Henry being out for like 4 weeks or 5 weeks now.
Right.
And you have Cleveland. So you have teams that have highly developed in the offensive line and have a premier running back, or you have a hybrid where you rely on the quarterback for some rushing attack as well. So, like, what do you think about that, and what do you think the Niners maybe need to envision based on that?
Yeah, I mean, what I see there, you hit it right on the head, which is there's a commonality to those teams. They either have a dominant rushing quarterback, or they have invested heavily into their offensive line, which is what I would attribute to the Tennessee Titans, that even, they had Derrick Henry for the majority of the season, but even without him, they are able to run the ball more effectively because they are a team that is built around having a strong offensive line that can push the pocket and push the line to gain those yards. I would attribute the same thing to Cleveland. They have that two-headed attack, and even though neither one of their star backs has been healthy the entire season, when they are healthy, they're very dominant. And again, they have invested heavily along the offensive line because of the division that they are in, and needing to win in the trenches when you play against the likes of Pittsburgh and Baltimore. For the 49ers, going into this year, I would have told you that we had invested into our offensive line, that we had nailed down Trent Williams, the best left tackle in the league. We brought in Alex Mack to fill in for what was just an unsuccessful attempt at filling the center role in years prior. I had great hopes for Alex Mack within this season. Laken Tomlinson, I've always seen as an above-average left guard. And then I had high hopes for Aaron Banks coming in, being a anchor along the right side that would help McGlinchey on the right side and provide a power run push that we were previously lacking with a little bit lighter and taller guys in McGlinchey. So I thought it set up for that, plus a deep running back room where we invested multiple picks. And it's just painful to think back now that the 49ers, in their player personnel choices and in their inability to really develop some of their young player personnel choices, just are not deep in that regard. Some injuries have contributed to that. Certainly the loss of Raheem Mostert impacted the run game a large percentage. But I was simply mistaken about just how good the 49ers were in those two areas.
Yeah, I think the injuries are the bigger reason for this. And you're looking at McGlinchey, as much as people want to show the highlights of him getting blown up in pass coverage, he's ranked top 5 in the league in for PFF in his run grade over his career. And so he's definitely successful there. You look at, I thought a second round offensive lineman should be starting for this team. That's what most second round picks be doing. Mac at least should, because in San Francisco's offense, he diagnoses the coverages and everything a little bit like that. So his intelligence, I thought, would help the team. And so overall, I thought the running attack would be elite in the league. And you're like, okay, they're 7th, so they're not bad. But you're showing now that when those couple of those pieces fall, injuries aren't a reason to blame a team for a loss. So how are we going to evolve as a run team to continue being effective?
Yeah, it is a great question. It's one that the 49ers are going to need to answer because, again, teams now have the recipe for success against the San Francisco 49ers. You simply take away the middle of the field, play the run first, and force Jimmy Garoppolo to beat you. And the reality is, against better teams, if the 49ers make mistakes, it doesn't appear that they have the talent to be able to turn it around. Getting to a couple of these super chats before we hit our next topic. Aaron from 49ers First Takes. If you guys don't follow the content, you should. Always have fun doing shows with Aaron. Aaron says, hey, Rob, thanks for putting out great content, going through some personal stuff. So this is definitely a good escape. Hey, man, I hope that this show helps in any way, Aaron. On a personal note, as a friend, I got your back. If you need anything, reach out and say hello. I hope that it's nothing too severe that you're going through, but I feel that way too at times. Football is a good escape, and so for me, that's why I try to stay positive. That's why I try to keep it lighthearted, because there are many things that occur in life that are much more serious than football. And what I don't want to do is add to people's problems by piling on a player, a team, getting overly negative and obsessing about it, because then I'm just throwing negative energy out into space. Yeah. And that negative energy could hit somebody right in the chest, right? And it could hit them at a moment where they're weak. It could hit them at a moment where they're not feeling up to snuff. And it may send them into a darker spiral. So that's part of my reasoning for always touching on gratitude, always trying to stay in positivity, and approaching things from a much more even-keeled nature, even on a day like today, where, let me tell you, it was hard to be positive.
Yeah.
All right, we got one more super chat before we go into our next topic. Manila Kid back in. Do we beat the Bengals on the road? I haven't done my game prep for the Bengals. I am going to do a special episode this week. Someone that has a podcast for the Bengals reached out to me to do a special episode where we talk about 49ers on to Cincinnati. but I haven't gotten there yet. My gut is yes. My gut is yes. The 49ers respond, that this was a wake-up call, an emotional one, that the 49ers shot themselves in the foot, and that they could have won this game, much as Randon commented earlier. I know they didn't. I'm not trying to rewrite history, but let's just say the 49ers are a good enough team to beat Cincinnati. You think that's a fair statement, Randon?
Are they good enough? Yes. Do I think they'll win? I don't know. I think you look at the Bengals also lost a tough game to the Chargers, and they could they could be wanting some vengeance. They're fighting for a playoff spot too, and I think it's going to be, both better sides of the team are now the offense, because with Mosley out, the defense is going to probably struggle a little bit. And it's going to be up to the offense to keep pace. Can we keep pace with Burrow and their fire attack over there with the three-headed monster that they have? Plus their tight end isn't that bad, and Uzmanzah, I think is what his last name is.
Yes.
Good
pronunciation. I would not have attempted it. I know what it looks like from fantasy, but other than that.
So I think that they can, and any given Sunday, right? They are good. They have won just as many games as they lost, and the Bengals have lost quite a few games as well. Some games pretty badly, but I feel Mixon is I think he's top 2 in the league in rushing yards. So they have a phenomenal rushing attack. They have a good vertical passing game, and we've been getting beat vertically. So the defensive game plan is going to be high there, and then we're going to need to see at least a B game from Jimmy to compete offensively.
I would agree with that. Jimmy has to have an above average performance. It needs to be a clean game, and we'll touch on that later as far as the 49ers needing to play clean games going forward. Our next topic here is the tale of two defenses, much like the tale of two cities. It's a long tale.
Yeah.
You're looking at a defense that was able to make some plays on Sunday. We were able to force 3 turnovers. We had 5 big sacks on Wilson, certainly able to hit him. Now, that was a positive. And then you have the flip side of that, which is a defense that continues to get gouged on big plays, continues to make commit bonehead penalties like the ones that we saw, several personal fouls by the defense on Sunday. Which of these two tales is the more accurate, or do we just have a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of a defense out there?
I think our defense goes exactly with our team. They're 6-6, so we're going to have good and bad there. You saw, like you said, that we actually committed. We got 4 forced fumbles. We only recovered 2 of them.
Right.
Got that. I would consider it a lucky pick, because that ball hit the Everett right in the chest and then off his foot.
Foot, right.
But lucky pick or not, you take whatever you can get, because sometimes the quarterback will throw it off a helmet and you get what you can get. So, and then the defense off the 3 turnovers we gave up only gave up points off of one of those turnovers. And so I thought they had a lot of positive parts. Some people that we weren't maybe expecting to step up, like this Bay Area says, DJ Jones and Al-Shaair played well. Bosa continued his sack streak there, a sack per game. So there's a lot of positives. But if you look at like the negatives, is that we gave up a lot of big plays to the wide receiver position. We were exposed constantly. They constantly went after us. And then the stupid penalty, right? Arden Key, you're just about to throw that. Arden Key, like launching his helmet into Russell Wilson when he definitely had plenty of time to dodge that. Those are just dumb plays. And we talked about it in, I believe, I forget what the matchup was against Jacksonville. They gave up many 3rd down penalties to extend those drives, and we did exactly that for Seattle. And we don't need to give Russell Wilson any more time to cook, like they say.
No, you can't give Russ time to cook. I called it that Russ was going to have a get-right game. You knew it was coming. You knew that Russell Wilson was not going to continue to play in the way that he had those 3 games coming off of injury. It was just a matter of time, and playing the San Francisco 49ers, a division rival, proved to be just the recipe for him to kick it into high gear and get it together. It was frustrating. Certainly, you cannot downplay the injury to Emmanuel Mosley. When he went out, it did take Russell Wilson a little bit of time to begin testing Lenoir. And then once he discovered that, oh yeah, there's a rookie in there attempting to cover DK Metcalf, right? It got ugly quickly. I think that once they got it going in that regard, then it was hard to overcome, and it becomes this snowball effect. I've compared it to the comebacks and the speech that Keanu Reeves gives about quicksand, and the 49ers seem to succumb to quicksand much in the way that the comebacks do in that foolish movie. If you want to go watch it, check it out. It is relevant to the San Francisco 49ers season because things start to go wrong, and then players on defense, offense, in this case, we're speaking about the defense, begin to try to overcompensate. They begin to try and do too much. And you see it with the pass interference penalties that were a plague of this defense earlier in the season. And I thought you saw it again on Sunday, that eventually enough things went wrong that players started to take it upon themselves to try and do more. And what happens then? Blown assignments, lack of communication, taking bad angles, right? Not filling your gap, trying to fill someone else's gap, and thus opening it up for others. All that said, though, they still did give the offense the shot to come back and tie up this game at the end.
They did enough to win this game.
They absolutely did enough to win this game. The balance of the blame does not fall on the defense. But going forward, in particular this week against Cincinnati, where this feels like a must-win, you drop two in a row, that is rough, real rough. Going up against this elite wide receiver core with this battered secondary is going to be a real test.
Yeah, and I think it also, good coaching can help with that in disguising coverages. Saleh got better with that and later on in his career. So, what would they do to mix up the coverages? But playing man on man with the corners that we have are not going to be a recipe for success. So, and then you saw even Lenore playing zone. He had an opportunity in the zone that they were covering. He backed off, even though there was nobody else in his zone to cover besides that one wide receiver. He could have cinched down on him, and he gave up multiple receptions that way too, playing too far off. And so that's just experience as well, that we lack experience. We lack depth. The top two corners on our team coming into the season are out. And, but next man up approach, you have to, injuries are not excuse for teams to lose games. I mean,
they are not.
The Colts had a better secondary, and they came into the blizzard or the monsoon and beat us. And so next man up, and I think it's going to be a lot on D'Amico Ryans to disguise coverages to make sure that we can be successful. And then, the defensive line is going to have to show why we invest so much capital into them.
Amen to that. And you're going to need to see something from these young players. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy in that the 49ers did not believe that a lot of these young players could contribute early on in the season. Therefore, they gave snaps to more veteran, players off the street like a Dre Kirkpatrick that could have gone to the rookies. And some of those would have come in losing efforts. Games we lost anyway, where those young guys could have gotten valuable experience. But we were very desperate to stay in contention, to win every possible game that we could. And I understand that logic. It's sound reasoning, but it cost us. And now when you do need to turn to those rookies, guess what? They still look like rookies, even though we are this far into the season because of choices that the 49ers made early, which is rough. Well, let's get a little bit of positivity before we go to our next topic. Niner Sickness comes on just to show some love. Hello,
Thank you,
Rob and Randon. Great live. Niner Sickness, what a guy. If you guys don't follow him, he has his own podcast. Go find him on YouTube. Good, positive Niner content. And I am here for that. Looking at our next topic, the not so special teams. Richard Hightower gets a lot of blame from 49ers fans at this point in time, and some of that is very deserved. I will point out, to his credit, that he's had to deal with even more injuries than the other two units, because every time there is an injury to a core special teams, every time there is an injury to someone on offense or defense, oftentimes the next man up is a core special teams player. And therefore, he has to deal with a constant rotation of gunners and other players coming on and off of special teams. That is, my defense of the hardship that Richard Hightower has had to go through. That said, I don't know that there's much of an excuse for just how ill prepared the 49ers were for that fake punt attempt to start the game. And that felt like a very, very key play in what otherwise, honestly, the fans in the seats were already writing off the game. I guarantee that the Seahawks players were not far behind that. If a few more plays early had gone the 49ers' way, you may have seen some players checking out as you did against the Washington football team when you went back and watched tape of Seattle. So it's fair to criticize that one play. Other than that, and obviously the fumble by Travis Benjamin, what's your take on the 49ers' third phase of the game, their special teams unit?
Yeah, I think it's, you look at it, and I'm going to play devil's advocate with the fake punt here. You're looking,
Okay,
you're looking at it was 4th and 6, so not really a fourth down that you typically go on. They were on their 3rd yard line or 27-yard line. So definitely not an area that you really go, you go forward on 4th down in general.
No.
So not only was the yardage a lot, it was the place in the field where they were at. And
it took some brass ones to do that for Pete Carroll.
It was a massive set of cojones on Carroll to call that play. So do I blame Hightower for not being quote unquote prepared for that? I don't even think that I didn't think that they were going to fake punt on the first drive of the game.
That's fair. Nor did I.
I don't think anybody in the fans thought that it happened. And the fact that he was so untouched just showed that the Niners didn't even consider a possibility that they were running a fake, right? Because when you think that there's a chance for a fake, like you spread out a little bit, you're not fully going after the block. Like
right.
It was really bad. And like, you got to give, like, just like you said, some brass ones on him to call that. And that's what you get when you're not in the playoff contention, or you have a very small sliver of making the playoffs. You could be ballsy like that, because what happens if it doesn't work? Oh, we're already a losing squad. This year's written off. It's not a big deal. Seattle fans were already like that. But man, like, that was some brass ones on him to call that. I think so good on them to get that. And, so I don't really judge that. You look at, I think maybe the more egregious thing for me is the fumble in the second half, right? So the Niners rebounded. They were leading going in the second half. We got the ball, so we could go up by 10 points if we score a touchdown. You fumble it right away, right? The only reason they didn't score on that drive is the lucky interception that we talked about that hit Everett in the chest.
Right, bounced off a foot.
If he catches that ball, which he should have, that's a touchdown. Now we're down 4 right away. Or down 5 because we only had a 2-point lead. You know what I mean? So like, it really changed the point of the game, that pick, even though we ended up getting a safety regardless, but the safety is better than a touchdown. I think the fumble going to the second half, when we had all the momentum and we overcame that fake punt in the first half, was the more egregious special teams error.
I have to agree, of the two, which was more egregious, and one that is a simple reminder to a returner who is coming in fresh. Again, Hightower having to deal with some injuries. Trenton Cannon getting injured on the first play now throws him into putting Travis Benjamin out there. And the only reason Travis Benjamin is even active for this game is because Deebo Samuel is out. So it's this whole domino effect that has taken place where now we have Travis Benjamin fielding that return. But to not pull him aside and say, the most important thing on this return is hold on to the ball. That, to me, does fall on Coach Hightower. I'm not going to get down on him too much, but that one does fall on him on my book. Just to get into, Sean Dunn had been putting in here, that it's not really Pete Carroll, that it was a special teams coach, and have to acknowledge that it clearly was a special teams coach that saw the weakness and that suggested it. But I would say that I'd almost guarantee at some point, either during the week or in the game live, Pete Carroll approved that decision as the man at the top of the totem pole, that he is the one that ultimately says whether they go that direction or not. But
even Sean saying, even Sean saying, though, if it's the special teams coordinator that came up with it, that's still we said that we lost the coaching battle. That's better coaching, like you're saying.
Yes.
Like, so, hey, we see a flaw here. I know it's gonna be a brass one on you to call it, but I think we could at least get the first down. I think we can at least get 6 yards if we call it. So let's go for it.
Yeah, and that would be one thing. If they had gotten the first down, not so egregious. But to allow the touchdown, to see that Dante Johnson doesn't even have his eyes on the up man in the replay, it is rough. Tommy Huxley is upset with it, throwing in the super chat, Low Tower should be fired immediately. Hashtag dead last. I don't think that we will see Coach Hightower getting released at this point in time. He and Coach Shanahan have ties that go back quite a way to, I believe, playing together at Texas when Shanahan was a wide receiver there in college. So I don't anticipate there will be an overreaction there. But going forward, we do need to see greater consistency from the special teams because the 49ers organization, the team as a whole, is not good enough to overcome these mistakes. So they have to play with fewer mistakes coming from that third phase that really you want value add and not value detraction.
Yeah.
Chris Royal coming back in with a super chat. The fumble was the most egregious, but I think that putting fake run for a touchdown gave the team and the crowd far more energy and momentum. 1,000%, Chris. Chris was there. He was 2 sections away from me. He was in the same section just on the other side of the 50 from me. So he had the same angles I did of that and the same feeling of that whole crowd when they thought that their Seahawks had gone 3 and out. I'm telling you, they were writing it off. They were congratulating 49ers fans on the sweet victory 1 minute into the game. Like it. You could tell the momentum had left the Seattle sideline and they were like, well, this is just who we are right now. And then out of nowhere, all of a sudden the crowd starts going wild. I'm looking at Brandon Ayuk because I think he's going to be catching a punt. All of a sudden I got to turn my eyes because I realize it never got punted, that Travis Homer is making a beeline for the end zone. The place went nuts. It absolutely lit up, and it certainly lit a fire underneath the entire Seahawks team. That was a momentum changer for sure.
I wonder if there was a lot of pressure from Hightower to Benjamin to house that ball in the second half.
If he wanted a offsetting positive play such that he applied a little bit of pressure, trying to get Benjamin to make a big play.
I mean, I know that special teams guys are like, hey, this is my job is to house it. It's not to get 10 yards, but
right.
But maybe there was some more pressure. Maybe Benjamin put the pressure on himself. Like, hey, like we're getting the ball back. We're only up 2. Like I'm going to try to house it and just be like, hey, the momentum's already in our favor. Let's just get a good gain and put the offense back on the field.
Right. That makes total sense to me. I could see Travis Benjamin doing that. And to his credit, I mean, a little, too late. But as soon as the ball was out, he was tapping his chest. He knew exactly what he had done. He knew that it was his bad, that he had just let down the team. I mean, I feel for him in that moment. I know there's a lot of venom from 49ers fans probably directed his way. Not from me. I just can't pile on a guy like that. It was a tough play. Yes, he should have had the ball high and tight, should have had multiple points of contact on it. He was carrying it a bit more like a loaf of bread, and that's unfortunate. But I get it. I get wanting to make the play.
The defense picked him up and got the turnover.
And it goes back to trying to do too much. It goes back to not having faith. It is that snowball effect, and that comes back to the entire team. It doesn't just fall on one individual. Speaking of one individual, the 49ers fan base certainly have what one might term as a toxic relationship with their own quarterback, meaning that the love and hate for Jimmy Garoppolo swings pretty wildly. And those of us that fall a bit more in the middle, which is where I like to count myself, that I'm always going to root for whomever is under center for the San Francisco 49ers. I always want them to have the best game available. I never want them to commit turnovers so that it might force the team into playing the rookie, who I also love and also hold in high esteem and think can do great things now and in the future. But once a game like this occurs, any of those folks that are on the fence do seem to swing towards that emotional blame Jimmy mindset. Is that fair? Is that really what we're seeing here, that Jimmy Garoppolo is at the center of our troubles?
Yeah, I'm going to hit on what you said first. I think Niners fans, or at least I am, like I root for the team. I root for wins. Wins are most important. I want to see the team in the playoffs. Whoever the quarterback is, whoever I want it to be versus whoever it is, it doesn't really matter. I want to win. So I'm not rooting against Jimmy to fail by any means. But I mean, we also could criticize the guy. I mean, he's the highest paid guy to play on the roster. He is the quarterback, which is the most influential player on the team, especially for football.
Yes.
And so I think that the relationship, I brought the why we use in relationships, I brought up last time. It's like a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, right? He cheats on you, has a bad play, and then he shows you why you got in the relationship in the first place. You remember all the good memories of 2019, and then you see the bad stuff again, and it opens up old wounds, and it's just the back and forth seesaw.
Yes.
Of wanting to see that, that you want him to win. You believe that he can win. He's shown that he can win. But then you also see all the stuff that you don't like about him. Like you see in the chat, happy feet. You see in the chat, like throws picks. He has half the amount of receptions to Diggs as he does to Trent Sherfield this season. So, he's throwing balls directly to defenders. He's making bad reads. And so I wanted to bring it up with you, and I brought it up before we got on. And, I think people maybe who aren't athletes or don't realize this is that all athletes, regardless of the sport, have their peaks, right? So they have their highest, their A games, and then every quarterback or every player has B, C, D, and F games, right? And so, they just don't bring it, or they're not as good, or they're not seeing the field as well, or maybe they're dealing with an injury or doing whatever, or teams are, keen on them, right? So what elite players do is they play more A games than they do the other B, C, and stuff like that. It seems Jimmy sits in the B, C, D area more often than not.
Quite frequently, yes.
And then his A game isn't as high as the other quarterbacks, right? So if Mahomes plays an A game, he's throwing the ball 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's rushing for a little bit. I don't think I've ever seen Jimmy throw for 404. It's very rarely. So you're seeing all those types of things.
He may have come close in that Saints game from 2019, but that is probably it.
Yeah. So, you're looking at those types of things. And then not only is it athletes have different style of games, you're looking at he's the most influential person on the team, being the quarterback.
Yes, most impactful for sure.
And there's only 17 games in the season. So the games that you aren't at your high level affect the team more often than not. Baseball has 162 games. Basketball and hockey have in the 80s. And you look at Connor McDavid for hockey, he only plays 20 minutes a night out of the 60, or 25 minutes out of the night out of 60. He holds the puck for maybe a total of 2 minutes, like actually on his stick, and so like where Jimmy touches the ball every game. And so it's just, I think a lot of fans, are upset that realize that his A game isn't elite. It's right in the top 10, top 15 range. And you see a lot more of the C, B through D games that you get. I don't think you see many F games where he's less than 100 yards and he throws for 4 picks. Like I think you see those games.
No.
But you don't really see the high level of B games. And like to be an elite quarterback, you have to throw a lot of B games in there to where even though you're not at your 100% best, you're still able to help your team win. I think that's where fans are tired of, is that Jimmy doesn't have a lot of those B and A games. He sits right in the average realm most of the time.
Yeah, and he gets paid to be someone who should have the A and the B games. But that's not Jimmy's fault, right? That is the 49ers organization jumping the gun on providing a contract after a 5-game sample size. Back to your idea of small sample sizes in the NFL. That was a small sample size. And overcommitting, but then not wanting to commit further, where they could have reduced his overall cap figure by extending him and getting him closer to the type of money that he probably should be paid. And I would think with Jimmy Garoppolo's attitude toward the team, toward being a team first player, that he probably would have agreed to that. But I like the point you make about sample size. It is why talking about the 49ers is so much damn fun, because from week to week, it is such a small sample size that we do have to overanalyze every single game. every single game is 1/17 of your entire regular season. That is wild. You have to consider every game as being super important. You have to overanalyze every snap, every single play design, and so forth. And you're right that the quarterback in the NFL, much like, say, a point guard in basketball, touches the ball on every play, that he has a greater impact than most other players. And Jimmy is not bad. He's just not great. And that can be so frustrating for fans that just want to see consistency, that see what Kyle Shanahan designs as sort of a symphony, a beautiful symphony. And all Jimmy needs to do, Kyle has given him the answers to the test. All Jimmy needs to do is provide those answers at the right time and at the right volume. But he can't seem to do that consistently. And that is what's so frustrating, that you have those throws to a linebacker over and over again.
Yeah, you throw to a linebacker and then, not making right reads, not attempting the ball downfield when he should. I mean, and he had good throws in this game. You saw
he did.
You saw one of the throws to Juice was really good, and then the next one he overthrew him.
Yeah, the other one not so much.
The touchdown to Kittle was a dart. I mean,
yes.
it over behind the safeties, and it was a dart there. And so you have some good throws in this game, but you look at Aaron Rodgers' first game of the season had a D game, but nobody in this chat or you and I would not consider him an elite quarterback, because more often than not, he's able to carry a team off his back. And we saw it this year with 23 or 30 something seconds, came back and beat us. We've seen Russell Wilson come back and beat us. And I don't think any fan or very little fans believe Jimmy can come down. And I mean, he almost did it this game and scored on the last part, but we don't see it frequent enough to believe in that for the most part.
No, we don't. A couple of super chats here before we get on to our next topic. Luke Luna coming in. Here's to heartbreak and left shoes. Much love, Rob. Luke, appreciate that. Yes, indeed. Life is sweeter with a little bit of heartbreak. I know how counterintuitive that sounds. Andres coming in. I'm a Dolphins fan. Y'all got great players, but truly just missing that quarterback. Kind of like us. What are both of y'all's opinions on Tua? I have to admit that I don't have a terribly informed opinion on Tua, but everything that I have read and seen firsthand leads me to believe that he has been inconsistent to this point in his career, but he's a young player, and therefore that inconsistency is not quite as frustrating as it would be as it is for 49ers fans when they look at Jimmy Garoppolo, who is a veteran player and still tends to make some of these mistakes that we want to categorize as more rookie mistakes. I see some promise in Tua. I don't know if I would build my franchise around him, but I certainly would not give up on him yet. I know from rookie quarterbacks that come into tough situations watching Alex Smith that if you had given up early in his career, you'd miss out on some damn good football later on. I think the Dolphins could continue to build around Tua and just, verify that they have what they thought they had when they drafted him.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins are doing a fair job with building their team. They went out and got Waddle. I think he's leading all rookies in receptions.
Waddle's been money for my fantasy teams.
Yeah, and I just think that a lot of, and maybe we should have this approach with our prospects as well for the Niners, is not all progression is linear. So you look at Tua was injured coming out of college. They brought in Fitzpatrick his first year. They were doing the back and forth on who should start. And so there really wasn't a full team behind him in that aspect. And so in reality, this is his first season and he got injured again. So has he really had a chance to settle in and be a quarterback of that team? My answer would be no. And maybe the progression will kick up as soon as he gets more playing time and more consistent time with his receivers. You look at his receivers have been injured most of the year as well. So his receiving core hasn't been there. Gaskin was a little bit of a bust compared to last year. But I think they're trying to build the team around him. I think they're doing a good job at drafting for the most part. And, they were willing to make the trade with the, multiple trades to get picks, and they have plenty of picks coming up. I think that he could be maybe not an elite top 5 quarterback, but you only need a top 10 quarterback to win in this league consistently. Right. And if you build the team around him, he could still be successful going forward.
I'll close on this with that topic that if I had the opportunity to trade for Deshaun Watson and I was reasonably clear that his legal troubles were behind him and I'm the Dolphins, yes, I'm making that trade because, you know what you have there. With Tua, it's still
Watson's
a bit of an
elite.
unknown.
Yeah.
But barring that, I'm sticking with him and going forward in that regard. EMA Beats, I just want to hit this because we will get to this topic in a little bit. But how many and which games do we think we can afford to lose? We've got the playoff picture coming up in just a moment. But first, we ain't finished with the quarterbacks just yet. The 49er faithful are very clear in getting louder and louder with their calls for Trey Lance. I had some unique observations on this myself, sitting no more than, say, 15 yards from where he and Jimmy were warming up throughout the game. But what are your feelings, Randon, on this call to make this switch and whether it would be beneficial for the 49ers at this point, looking at it from the perspective of clearly the 49ers are attempting to win every single game. Clearly they believe they still have and do have a path to the playoffs versus getting some progression for the rookie, getting some experience for Lance, and looking toward 2022 as a more important season.
Yeah, I think that Jimmy G will be the quarterback going forward, just based on what Kyle Shanahan said until we're eliminated. But I'm going to make the argument for Trey here, and I think maybe the way that Kyle is maybe the plug on this and not Trey, right? So you look at the Ravens when they were winning, they brought in Lamar after a 3-game skid. We've already had our 4-game skid of the season. They brought him in after a 3-game skid, and he took them to the playoffs. The Ravens had a completely different offense under Joe Flacco than they did under Lamar. So why can't we do the same thing? Why can't Shanahan just say, hey, we're going to fully build the offense around Trey. We're fully going to do it. We're just going to commit to it. Jimmy, show us what he is. Thank you for the 4 out of 5 games. But, I've seen enough. Why can't we drop screens for Trey Lance? A lot of people say his short yard accuracy isn't there, but in reality, he had a better accuracy percentage in college than Mac Jones from 0 to 5 yards. So it's not consistently from the 15-yard area and most of the short throws, and his timing's off. But we've seen it with Jimmy. Like, Jimmy throws high. Jimmy throws hospital balls. His timing isn't great, but Jimmy doesn't add that athletic build. And so I could see, like, now that Deebo is running a lot of plays in the backfield, you have Elijah Mitchell, who is in competition maybe for a dark horse for Rookie of the Year, depending on how well he finishes the season.
Right.
And then maybe you get the running attack from Trey Lance. Like, you could build the full team around him. And I'm not, like, throwing away the season because of this loss. Like, teams lose. But my case for Trey Lance is that Shanahan's supposed to be this genius. And they said that he was drafting up plays for him in the plane after going to his pro day, or going after Justin Fields' pro day. Like, you're thinking about him even regardless if you were looking at Fields. Like, okay, where's that creativity? Where's that spunk that you said that he had?
Where's that inspiration?
Where's that inspiration? And to say, hey, like, I think fans are like, he's the number 3 pick. We spent 3 first-round picks for him. Jimmy throws up, like our analogy before, more B, C, D games than A games, and his A games aren't elite. So why couldn't? And then we're 6-6. I think a lot of fans also say, like, oh, we're 6-6. We probably could have done that with Trey and get him some time in the game. Right. So with all those things said, and the fact that we have one of the easiest schedules going into the rest of the season, I think that's my point for Trey Lance. Is like, okay, we could build the offense around him. We're already running the ball 40 times a game. Like, why not? And build a complete team around him. Show him you have confidence in him, and just go for it. But I think the fact that Shanahan has only had 1 winning season is like tugging at him to get a W season on the board. And he feels more confident, even though he doesn't feel confident in Jimmy to lead him to maybe a Super Bowl or like to be the quarterback of his franchise. Cause obviously he went out and tried to get every single quarterback out there.
Yeah. Flirted with everybody available.
But maybe he's like, hey, what if I get fired after this year because I don't get into the playoffs? Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No, because they just signed him to another contract. But is Jimmy more likely to do that as Trey? But like, that's why I think maybe Kyle's thing is at it. But my thing is like this: like, you drafted him 3rd overall. You could build a completely different offense around him. It's shown that you can do it with the Ravens. I mean, they had Flacco and Lamar Jackson are about as polar opposites of quarterbacks as anybody, as anybody else. So
Yes.
like, why couldn't you do that and go in there? You know, like, and let me ask you a question. Right now, like, we both want to win over anything else.
Yes.
We're a 500 team. If they
Yep.
put in Trey Lance right now and we miss the playoffs, are you disappointed?
Yes, absolutely. I'm disappointed either way if we miss the playoffs. So that could be, you know, a telling tale of my opinion on it. But what I will say is, I get the line.
Sorry, I went on a rant. Go ahead.
I understand. I understand. And it's a rant worthy topic. I think that 49ers fans are very passionate about this, as are you and I. So I think that my fear, and I don't know if it's a fear so much as maybe an acknowledgement of where Kyle Shanahan is that Kyle is very much clinging to this idea of Jimmy gives him the best chance to win because of the way that he operates the offense, because of something he's seen from Trey Lance. I believe wholeheartedly Kyle Shanahan wants to win every single game, that he is not, I don't buy into any conspiracy theories, no tanking, no nothing like that. If he thought Trey gave him a better chance to win, I think he would put him in. Now that we have lost this game, I believe he will cling that much tighter to Jimmy Garoppolo, because the window for getting into the playoffs, which we'll touch on in just a moment, and I did see in the comments that somebody said, how about we talk about which games are winnable to go glass half full? Yeah. And I appreciate that. I believe it was Texas Niner throwing that in there. Yeah, I'm going to take that positive angle when we do the playoff route. But now that window is shrinking, Kyle Shanahan will feel even more and more pressure for each game and see mistakes as being something that the 49ers can't come back from. What I observed on the sideline that had me thinking that, okay, well, maybe Kyle's on to something. Maybe he's seeing something in practice. So this was just an observation, and I don't usually like to pass along speculation, but this is something I saw with my own eyes, and therefore I feel safe in passing it along just as that, just as an observation. There were several instances where, as Jimmy and Trey are throwing the passes back and forth to the receivers in that four-man position, which is just standard getting ready, getting warm to go back into the game, right? It's Trey providing that service to help get Jimmy ready, but in turn keeping himself ready. I saw a couple of bad passes from Trey, right? And that's nothing. I mean, you said it about Jimmy. He is capable of throwing a hospital ball. He's capable of missing a wide open guy. But it was Trey's reaction and working through his own throwing motion that had me on the inside acknowledge that potentially he really is going through some things in attempting to get his motion and get his passes to where they need to be to operate this offense. And if he's in his head, if that's where he's at, then I don't want him out on the field, because I think there are a couple of scenarios in which you can actually do damage to your rookie quarterback. One is the David Carr scenario. You throw him out there, he gets sacked more than any quarterback has ever gotten sacked in the NFL, and now he's traumatized. You can't overcome that. You cannot undo the amount of physical abuse you take and the PTSD that develops from that. But the other is a player starting to doubt themselves, starting to get into their own head, and that being a detriment to their progression the next year. If Trey is struggling with his throwing motion, and that was my observation with my own two eyes, then I think it's more important that he get comfortable and be comfortable when he is thrown in there than to say, well, he's got these physical gifts that will overcome that, because I don't want him to revert on any of those mechanics that he's been working on. I would rather have him make a natural progression, and I'm okay with losing this season if it props Trey up for a more successful future. I still see him as the face of this franchise, the future going forward, and his development is paramount to this season alone. So I just wanted to throw that observation out there, because I know fans are wondering why in the world we might not just be making that switch. So I think Kyle wants to stick to Jimmy because he believes that he gives him the better chance to win, and that may change. If we continue to lose, it certainly, you would think, would change. But from what I saw, I don't know if I can second guess him after that.
So I think you're looking at, like we said it before, I said it before, progression isn't always linear. And you can bring up every scenario in the book about a successful and an unsuccessful guy and the path they took to to the NFL stardom, right? So you're like, oh, well, Mahomes sat, so it's a positive thing to do. Well, what about all the guys that sat and sucked? And then you're looking at like, okay, Herbert had an MVP, or the best rookie season we've ever seen from a rookie. Joe Burrow was successful before he got injured. Kyler Murray was at least feasible on the field, and you have all these kind of stuff that they progressed, and they progressed by playing. So
they did, no doubt about it.
And you see both of these going on, and I think that maybe for both Jimmy and Trey, that the organization is at fault, in my opinion, because you look at, like, they didn't really back Trey. In my opinion, like, all the stuff verbal is like, oh, he was young, he's young, and you're backhanding, or slight, you're sliding him to prop up Jimmy instead of just propping Trey up. Hey, Trey's a rookie. We believe he's our future. We believe that he can work on all the things that he needs to work on from the bench. Right now, Jimmy G is our quarterback. How hard is it to say that? But it's all like, oh, he's young. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff bothers me. With his throwing motion, he worked all offseason on it. And sometimes when the heat is on, you revert back to stuff that made you unsuccessful. And so
absolutely, regression happens in the heat of the moment.
But I mean, you see Jimmy has happy feet too when he airballs. So like, it just seems to me that it's just like everybody wants to call him a bust, and progression isn't always linear. Like, I'm gonna bring up the Mahomes thing again. Like, Mahomes had way more passes in college, and he was more of a prolific college player,
right?
But didn't he throw 50 touchdown passes his first actually full season playing as a quarterback?
He was pretty good.
He only started one game as the rookie year.
And I just want to take a moment to clarify that is not my implication of what I saw of Trey Lance. That what I'm saying is what I observed and what I believe could be going on for him right now. I don't think that says anything about his ability to develop, nor to continue to work on that throwing motion. But I do think it's something that is there for athletes and is very real, that when they're in their head, when they're not just acting physically, that in the NFL is a recipe for disaster, because things happen so quickly. If you're a half a beat behind, you can take that one shot that knocks you out of the game. You can delay on the pass that you should make and throw the interception instead. And so I just see it as something that he's working through and could provide some backstory as to why Kyle doesn't feel he's ready to go in there. It is by no means a reflection on his abilities as a quarterback or on his future potential. I just want to throw that out there so that nobody thinks I am being overly negative.
And to all these fans out there saying that, oh, he throws too hard and receivers don't like it. Did you see Keenan Allen's response to a reporter asking about if Herbert throws the ball too hard?
No, tell us.
Keenan Allen says, you're a professional wide receiver. Go out and practice, turn the jug machine up to 11 and catch the damn ball.
Yes.
Like,
turn it up to 11. I love it.
So it's like, Herbert throws the ball hard. Josh Allen throws the ball hard. Mahomes throws the ball hard. Like, all these players throw the ball hard. Like, that's not an excuse. You're a pro. No. You're a pro receiver. Go out there and practice and do your job.
Go out and catch bricks with Jerry Rice. Damn it. He lives in the area, and he would work out with any of these fools. I'm not calling Niners fools. I'm just, a term of endearment, as we say. All right. We acknowledged it. It is here. The 49ers do have a shrinking playoff window. Before this week, I would have said that to comfortably get into the playoffs, the 49ers needed to end up 10-7, which, when there were 6 games remaining, meant that we could go 4-2 down the stretch. By that logic, if I stick to it, the 49ers, with their 5 remaining games, can really only miss one of them. However, because of what happened in the NFL on Sunday, I think it's fair to assume that the 7th seed will probably actually go to a team that is 9-8 with some tiebreakers. I would anticipate that several NFL teams in the NFC end up at that 9-7 slot. And then it comes down to this weird set of tiebreakers. Not always head-to-head. Sometimes it's common matchups. It does get a bit strange the more teams that are involved in a tie. Let's start with that. Let's start with what you think the bar is for getting into the playoffs. With 5 games remaining, how many do you think the 49ers need to win in order to make the 7th seed at a minimum.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting. If you look all the way down to the 12th seed, the 12th seed Saints are only they're 5-7 and we're 6-6. So that's
Right.
one game difference. So I mean, I think you might see, if the teams beat up on each other in playoffs and all that kind of stuff, you might see an 8-9 team with all the tiebreaker stuff get in.
Right.
I think 9 wins. 9 wins would be you're leaving at the chance. 10 wins is probably guaranteed at this point. But it's going to be tough. I think there's a lot of teams that have shown they can win. Washington's had some good quality wins. The Eagles have had some quality wins. The Vikings have had some quality wins. Will the Panthers be able to get back on track? The Saints have a quality defense, and the Falcons just beat a playoff team, recently. So like, it's just like, I don't really know how you say that it's not how all these tracks are going to merge come week 17.
It's going to be wild, and the NFL loves this. They are eating this up. The parity in the league this year is almost at the precipice of too much parity. That if it gets any more unpredictable from week to week, the NFL might want to try and reel it in a bit, because it is nice to know that you have good teams in the league that you can count on as sort of those top 3 or 4 that are going to be your anchors as far as good, solid teams, going to make deep playoff runs. But instead, we have this wild season that's going on where all of these big upsets seem to continue to happen on a weekly basis. And it is a fool's errand to try and predict just how it will play out. I do think it is safe to say that if you can get to 10 wins, which I think we're in agreement on after that little conversation, if you can get to 10 wins, you're in. That seems like a fair statement to me. But you could sneak in with that 9-7. So let's go through, and if we stick with, let's go 49ers, get to 10 to earn yourselves a spot in the playoffs. Do you see the game this week on to Cincinnati as one of the most challenging ones remaining? Let's just quickly, we'll go through them one by one, but just quickly so everyone knows, we've got, correct me if I'm wrong about this, Randon, we have Cincy coming up, then we come home, we play Atlanta, then we go on a short week of travel right before Christmas to go play Tennessee, then we come home against Houston. We have a short trip down to LA for the 5th and final game, week 17, against the Rams. So going back to this week's matchup against Cincy, is that one of the toughest remaining on the schedule?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most influential. I think the 2 games that are most influential will probably be the Bengals and Titans, because the last game of the season against the Rams, we don't know if they're fighting for anything. We don't know because right now the playoff picture, they are the 5th seed. So they can't go up any more than that, because they'd have to overtake the Cardinals, right? So they have
right.
2 games. They have 2 games on both Washington and the Niners. So they would have to go, they'd have to fall pretty far in their previous matchups, which the Rams have a lot harder schedule than we do. So it is possible that the last game of the season will be, for the 5th seed if everything works out. But most likely we'll be fighting for the 6th and 7th spot. So I think the 2 biggest games are going to be the Bengals and the Titans.
I think that's fair. The Bengals has to be the biggest right now, because if you lose 2 games in a row, the disheartening factor, the panic that sets in for the team, for the fan base, it becomes contagious. And again, I just don't think that this team, as it's built right now with the injuries they've sustained, can overcome the snowball effect. I've seen it too many times this year to believe that we will be able to overcome it. So I think we have to turn it around this week. But AJB points it out. If we do, if we are able to contain that 3-headed monster of the amazing wide receivers and Joe Burrow chucking them the ball all around the field, if we're able to keep up, if we have a phenomenal run game where we're able to sustain long drives, or Jimmy pulls out one of his very few A games that he has in his pocket, we then come home to a classic trap game against Atlanta. AJB pointing out Atlanta has had our number at times, and they did in a classic trap game in 2019, where, if you will remember, Julio Jones caught that dagger at the goal line, which cost me my celebration in week 17. Because of that damn catch, I couldn't celebrate Dre Greenlaw's stop because I was worried it was going to get overturned, much like it had in Atlanta. And then short week, long travel, and a tough team against Tennessee. That one jumps out to me as the toughest remaining. They are going to be fighting for a lot, and they will potentially have the king back at running back. You may have Derrick Henry back in the backfield at that point. They are a dangerous team on a short week. Christmas distracts players. When you're at home, you're at least in your own bed and you have all those things going for you. When you're traveling as well, that sets up to be a tough game. And then if we're talking about winning 4 out of 5, that means that you then have to come home and knock off the Texans, which is avoiding another trap game. And let's be honest, the 49ers have now fell in 2 trap games. And then you have that week 17 game against the Rams, which they could be locked into position. They could also be fighting for their playoff lives and trying to remedy the embarrassment of getting owned, much like we have tried to remedy that embarrassment against Seattle. So it sets up as a very, very tough road forward for the 49ers. I guess my biggest takeaway from this, and I'd be interested to have your final thoughts on it as well, is that the 49ers must be focused week to week. They cannot be ahead of any of these games. They've got to be locked in and playing each week. I know it sounds so obvious, but as must-win matchups every single week going forward. You can't take any of those trap games off, and you must come out with your A game against teams like Cincinnati and Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, Man in the Arena. I've been watching that documentary about Tom Brady and the Patriots, and as cliche as it is, like, it's one game at a time. Like, you have to handle your business every week. You can't just, and then with the Niners being 6-6, that you can't look forward. Like, if the Niners are Arizona right now, and maybe they look forward and they're like, okay, we're in the playoffs, we can look forward a little bit, but you can't look forward. And there's no game on the schedule left that's a gimme, maybe besides Houston, because they're just so awful. But even then, you don't want to overlook that. I think that if you maybe look at it in chunks and like what you have to do for like as a fan, but you can't as a team. Like, as a team, you have to go out there and handle your business next week.
To quote one of the greatest, on to Cincinnati. All right, our next topic, before we end on a positive note, which we are going to do, we're going to hit 2 topics at the end that are both positive because that's the way in which I like to roll. Can the 49ers win without being perfect? This thought came to me in that we played a subpar Seattle team. Let's be honest, that even with the rebound of Russell Wilson, that Seattle team was flawed. The 49ers should have beat them. It was a mistake-filled game that cost us. The 49ers shot themselves in the foot. They committed turnovers. They committed penalties. They made big mistakes in that game, and that absolutely did cost them the victory. When they play better teams, that margin for error shrinks considerably. In the games that have gone so well for the 49ers, it's when they are playing complementary football and everything builds off of each other, that the run game is working effectively, even if not for big gash chunk plays. It is working effectively enough that the 49ers sustain long, big drives that chew up clock, that rest the defense. And then the defense comes in rested, is able to get off the field quickly because the pass rush is still effective because those players are still rested. Everything works together. When anything seems to come apart, much like an Italian sports car, when it's running, it's glorious, but it's in the shop all the time, and any minor thing can throw off the engine. Can the 49ers overcome more of these mistakes against better matchups, against better teams? When they face Green Bay or Tampa Bay or Arizona in the playoffs, are they going to be able to overcome any of these mistakes?
No.
That's not a hopeful answer.
That's a short answer. And the reason it is, and the reason that I want to go with that is that all of the topics that we've been talking about all go into this question, right? So how are we getting A game Jimmy Like, are we getting Saints Jimmy where he was back and forth with Drew Brees the whole game and like he never backed down? Are we getting more C Jimmy? Is Elijah Mitchell able to break off a run? Do we have Deebo back? Or is the secondary going to be competent the rest of the season? Like, there's so many variables. And ultimately, I think you look at why the team wanted Stafford and Deshaun Watson and now Trey Lance is that they want a quarterback who can make up for losses on the rest of the team. They want a quarterback who's able to, okay, hey, when we need it, let's go down and score here. And, you know, as much as fans don't like Jimmy G, he was first in the league in comebacks in the fourth quarter in 2019. And we just haven't seen that enough this year to win games. And then the defense hasn't been elite to hold off the leads for the games that we are ahead. So that's why we're 6-6. And I think a lot of fans are like, okay, we have an easy schedule this year. We're getting Jimmy back. We're all saying we should have at least, 12 wins on the books. And the season just hasn't went that way. And so I think if we get in the playoffs, it's going to be matchup based, right?
Yes.
You look at Seattle. Seattle matches up well with us, regardless of how good they are, because they're not afraid to put a bunch of people in the box. They have Jamal. They have Adams in the back. They have Diggs in the back that are willing to roam the whole backfield if Jimmy decides he ever wants to throw deep for the most part. And even if they get burned once, which they did, you believe in Russell Wilson to counter strike at any moment. So, like, I think that teams that are going to give us troubles are maybe not teams like the Rams. That are teams that are like the Bucks that have elite run defenses. They have a quarterback who can counter at any moment. You're like that we don't stand much of a chance against a team like that, or maybe a team like Arizona who has shown that they've had our number since 2019, even with rookie Kyler Murray. And so it just kind of, I think we're going to be matchup based, and we're going to have to play a high quality game to win those games. But you can't count anything off, right? Because Eli Manning has 2 rings.
That's right. Back to the tiny sample size, right? These are not best of 7 series. These are one and done. Any team can win in the NFL. A couple of fumbles here and there, and a bad team beats a good team. It just is a small sample size, and the ball bounces in funny ways in the NFL. I think that the only way the 49ers' best recipe for success is to play clean football. That is tough to do. It's tough to play 60 minutes without mistakes, especially when you have a quarterback who, as a game manager, tends to make more mistakes than you would like a game manager to make. What I will say is the other way in which the 49ers in the playoffs could pull this off is just open it up a bit. What do you have to lose at that point? If Kyle really, really gets into his bag and really gets creative and just goes for it, goes for the win at all cost, to hell with everything else, to hell with the criticism he would face if he failed, but just pursue it, just force Jimmy into those scenarios where you're asking more of him, bring more creativity to the run game. I could still see this team going on a run. I know I'm being overly optimistic with that, but there is enough talent that if the right players are healthy at the right time, you have enough special players in Deebo, Kittle, Elijah Mitchell, Brandon Ayuk if he's on, Juice if they use him effectively. This offense can put up points. It's just that we tend to shoot ourselves in the foot. If we took bigger swings, we might be able to overcome some of these. And it's just, you've got to hope that, what do you have to lose in the playoffs? If you're going into a matchup where the other team has the advantage, much like the 49ers going up against the Seattle Seahawks, what did they have to lose? Nothing. And they left it all out on the field, and they beat us because of it.
Yeah. Right, I think you're 100% right there. And I want to ask you a question here Are you confident in Kyle to be aggressive enough? Because it seems like he was pulling the bag out against New Orleans, and then some games he just takes a lapse and it's like, okay, we're just gonna run the ball 40 times and run all over everybody and run it for 3 yards a gain. Is this a game right now in Cincinnati where he needs to pull out the bag and be as creative as he possibly can be?
Yes, I think he needs to do it against Cincinnati this week. Do I have faith that he will? I'm a bit back and forth on that. I swing back and forth in the same way that my vacillation occurs in thinking about Jimmy Garoppolo is that I see flashes. I see times where Kyle Shanahan has that confidence, has that aggression, but not on a consistent basis. And so am I faithful that it will happen? No, I'm optimistic, but I'm not counting on it. It has been an inconsistent year for Kyle. I'm just glad that he's finally admitting as such that he came out and said he was struggling with designing two systems and getting Trey Lance worked in because it threw off his rhythm as a play caller. But no,
Yeah,
I
he
don't
was
have
honest about
complete
that.
faith. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's end on a couple of positives as we wrap up this show. The first one is, can you smell what Kittle is cooking? Kittle had himself a game on Sunday, and he has been contributing in other ways in games prior, but I don't think fans really recognize his contributions within the run game. Just how special was George Kittle's performance on Sunday? How did you see it, and how do you see it going forward, Rand?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was he brought the hammer this game, and which in the team that needed, right? 9 for 181 and 2. He had one where that Jimmy threw a dime to him in the back of the end zone, still a good catch. And then, the Yak Man himself, man, tight roping down the line for the tug, man. It's what you like to see, and it's and just like we talked about the defense, it's like a tale of two players. Like, he's so elite as a run blocker as well that I just wonder if you can effectively use all his talents throughout the game. Like, obviously we don't need a 9 for 181 every week, but can we get like a 5 for 80? And he runs well. Like, it just seems like either he has one catch or he has a blow up game. And even with the inconsistencies, he's third in yards per game for a tight end. He's 21st overall in yak yards in the season, and he missed time. So, he is an elite player at his position.
Yes,
I just wonder, and I'll let you answer that question. Do you think that the Niners, one, have an offense that is able to feed Ayuk, Kittle, Deebo, and Elijah Mitchell? Or do you think it's just the fact that he's so good in the run game that they're unable to utilize him, all his talents in the same mindset?
It's a nuanced discussion, and I think there's truth from multiple angles that apply here. There's only so much effort you can give on the football field, and therefore, if you are being used heavily in the run game, that does impact your ability to be effective, overly effective within the pass game. I'm with you in thinking that you could get more consistency from him. I do think that the 49ers offense, whether it is Kyle Shanahan and the game plan itself or Jimmy Garoppolo, becomes fixated on single players within a game, and that can be to their detriment. It leads to amazing performances. You see it from Deebo Samuel. It has happened for Brandon Ayuk. Certainly, Kittle's performance on Sunday was one of them. But it also fails to get everyone else in rhythm. It then creates a situation where, end of the game, Shanahan admitted as much, the primary target on both of those final two throws was George Kittle. Seattle obviously knew that going into those plays and did everything they could to take him away. They effectively did. We were forced to go to our second option, and it was someone who hadn't contributed to that point and wasn't able to then make the plays that we needed. Now, you can say what you want about the final play with it getting batted down, but I think that my argument would be we need to see a better balanced offense, and that's what I was hoping would come out of this Deebo Samuel injury. I thought that was going to potentially be a positive coming out of a negative, was that it would force the 49ers to spread the ball around. Instead, they just flipped from Deebo over to George Kittle, and they became very centered around the one player that they felt was winning every matchup. And it worked to some extent, but it just wasn't enough when the game was on the line. So I've always been a huge fan of Kittle. Even when he wasn't contributing, I saw what he was doing in the run game, and I thought that was spectacular. The value he adds to this team, the physical way in which he plays, he's one of my favorite players on offense. I do think that whether it's Kyle Shanahan or Jimmy G, they need to do a better job of spreading the ball around.
Yeah, I think sometimes and I think it's a double-edged sword for this comment that I'm about to make. I think we sometimes bash Kyle for not continue going to the well when it's successful and moving away from things.
Away from it.
And
Yep.
then we want to bash him also for not having a well-balanced offense. Obviously, so I think it's a double-edged sword, and you can't have a consistent opinion of every game because every game is constantly evolving. It's an amoeba, and Kyle needs to adapt to that. But you look at I don't have Jimmy's stats up right now, but he's around 225 yards a game.
That seems right.
So you can't have 300-yard receivers a game. You can't have all three blow up. But if you look at this game, Ayuk had a drop or 2 drops.
Yeah, a critical one on that third down.
He was also wide open on a couple plays, and Jimmy overthrew him. So you're looking, he could have had, over 100 yards as well in this game, and kind of spread it out. So it just it just seems to be that I don't think as a passer Jimmy can elevate maybe 3 receiving options, and maybe that's why you're seeing Deebo more as a running back. But it's just a question. I think that we'll see maybe how the season turns out, because until I did looked up the stats for Kittle, I thought he wasn't even close to where he was. But he's still the 3rd overall tight end in yards per game.
That's wild.
He's still 21st overall in yak yards with missing all this time. So it's just, for me, it's is our perception based on what we're seeing without facts, or is it hard to just be elite all the time? I mean, Kelsey would be no doubt the number 1 tight end in football, and he put up 40 yards this week, and he had a fumble. So, like we said with Jimmy, you can't always have an A game, but
no.
But are we? Let me bring it back. Can we be at that balanced offense like what you were talking about, and how does that get accomplished?
Yeah, is that even possible? I think to me, we always compare the high water mark for Kyle Shanahan being his 2016 season as the offensive coordinator for Atlanta. And that was just a spread the ball around. Everybody was eaten. Yes, you had your primary target in Julio Jones, but if you go back, it was remarkable what that offense was able to do. So Kyle Shanahan is capable of it. It must be some common thread around this offense and the players that he's working with here, unless he's changed in his own beliefs of what a successful or balanced offense looks like. So you would think that it probably comes back to some of the limitations he feels with Jimmy Garoppolo, whether he's right or wrong about that. So for me, I think that I still would like to see better balance, even if we're dividing up those yards from fewer total yards. I'd rather that it gets spread around, because I do think that it's easier to beat teams when they have a single weapon they rely on to the nth degree. Once you get into the playoffs, if we haven't developed Kittle further, Brandon Ayuk more, and more receiving threats, when we get to the playoffs, teams will take away Deebo, and that seems to be a recipe for beating the 49ers, as evidenced by Deebo being out in this game. Although his season has been so special that maybe you can't stop Deebo when he's out there on the field. Either way, it is something for the 49ers to work at. Whether Deebo is back this week or not, they are going to need to put up, you would think, considerable yards against Cincinnati to stay in this one. So it'll be a true test of Shanahan, Jimmy, and the receiving core to see what they can come up with.
They will have to put up at least 30 in this game to win, in my opinion.
I would think that would be the case. All right, let's end on our last topic here. We'll make it a quick one just to recognize Azeez Al-Shaair. Fantastic game. I believe he ended up with 16 tackles. He had a forced fumble. He had a half a sack. I mean, it was a great game for Azeez. Just want to recognize him. I picked him up in 2 of my fantasy leagues where I have the IDP, and he lit it up for me. Can't go wrong with that. I mean, we have a special linebacking core. When they are all healthy and back on the field, we have 3 damn good linebackers. It's a pretty remarkable find for the 49ers.
Yeah, he did a great job stepping up, and you have to, the next man up, like we said the whole podcast here, and he definitely did that. He's done that all year with Greenlaw's injury and everything like that. My question with you is that they came in to start the season saying that Warner was going to be used more in blitz packages and everything like that, and it seemed that they did that for Al-Shaair this game, and they haven't been doing that for Warner all season. And so is there something in that ability for him that he has that lends himself more to rushing the passer versus a Warner?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing because in the preseason you heard that from D'Amico Ryans saying that he was going to try and get greater attempts for Fred Warner in rushing the passer. And to this point in the season, it has been statistically the opposite of that. He's had fewer than he had last season. I thought that it was a factor, a result of all that was being put on Fred's plate with the new defensive system being implemented, that they just hadn't gotten to a comfortable spot. But perhaps it is that he doesn't have the traits that D'Amico is looking for in that. Aziz plays downhill and he plays very fast and he plays very physical. And it is a natural fit with using him on those plays to rush the passer. It's something that we've been missing. So from my side of it, I'd like to see it continue, even if it's not using Fred Warner going forward, even if it's finding those reps for Aziz to have an opportunity to rush the passer.
Yeah, they did it with Aziz. They did it with Ufunga in this game. Obviously, when you blitz, you put more responsibility on the corners to cover. And with our injuries there, I wonder if that's going to change Ryan's perception on how the defense is supposed to perform, or how they're going to perform, or how they're going to get the job done. So it's going to be interesting there. But yeah, we talked about it. Like, Warner seems to have the build. He's fast. He's intelligent. He can find holes like that. You see the successfulness of other linebackers and what they have in the blitz game, as well as being a total complete linebacker. Like, where is the balance? And is it just like they saw something as the season moved on? Did they put too much responsibility on Warner to just control the middle of the field, and so somebody else had to step up in the blitz package? I'd be interested to ask D'Amico Ryans, or have somebody ask D'Amico Ryans about that. Why the change in plan from the beginning of the season to now, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, you would think that it could have been matchup dependent. Certainly, Seattle has a poor offensive line, so he may have seen some advantage there for the 49ers that he wanted to take advantage of going forward. So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because Russell, a lot of people don't really know, is usually top 5, top 10 in the league and get sacks given up every year, because he likes to let the routes develop going downfield. He likes to play a little bit of hero ball, bouncing through the lines and doing those things. And so you're going to see it to where when he's trying to play hero ball, he can give up a sack. And so with the blitz and doing all those things, I wonder if that was a little bit more of the matchup based on the type of stuff that Russell likes to do.
It would fit. All right, before we go, we got one last super chat that we're throwing in from Miguel here. Thank you, Miguel. Appreciate that. Miguel asks, Trey needs to start against the Bengals. Enough with Jimmy G. We are 6-6. What is the point of playing Jimmy G that can't see a linebacker? Well, Miguel, we definitely touched on this a bit today. I go back to Kyle Shanahan must believe that Jimmy gives him the best chance. And there must be logic to that. There must be things that he's seeing in practice with Trey where he believes that those shortcomings for Trey outweigh the benefits of his physical play style, of his plus ability to extend the play with his legs and ability to take more deep shots than Jimmy is. But it is harder and harder to defend it when you see inconsistent play. I go back to believing that Jimmy, with his lack of shot plays, of chunk plays, is more in the game manager realm. And if you're a game manager, you have to properly manage games. You can't be a turnover machine. So after performances like this, I find it more difficult to defend the idea of sticking with Trey Lance, but there has to be sound logic behind it. Wouldn't you agree, Randon?
Yeah, I think you look at, maybe he's just said it all year and he's going to follow, and he's going to say, oh, I had a plan. The plan didn't work out. We didn't execute, and all this kind of stuff. So his plan is, hey, we're going to play Jimmy until we're eliminated, or I feel that we don't have a chance to win, which, if you look at the schedule, could be Houston. It could be those games, and he plays the final 2 games of the season. I already made the case for starting Lance next week. I thought they should have started him from the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
But I think the fans look at, we're 6-6. Like, why could he not do what Jimmy's doing at this point?
Right.
But I think that maybe Kyle's like, okay, well, I got to put a winning season on the board. I know I can win with Jimmy. I know what the game plan is. I know how to run the offense with him. And I think you're looking at progression as Kyle, as a play caller, he would have to develop as well if you start Trey Lance. So Kyle would have to grow as a play caller if you start Trey Lance. And so maybe he doesn't want to take that chance and look foolish and then also miss the playoffs. But I think a lot of fans are feeling this way is if they don't make the playoffs with Jimmy G and Trey Lance doesn't get any development time, then that's a double negative. And then what was the point of the season at all?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to end on this one because this would be, regardless of how this season has gone, if all of these things happened in this next Super Chat, the point of this season would be setting us up for success in 2022. We've got Sean done with some bold predictions. Here we go. Release Jimmy Garoppolo. Extend Bosa and Deebo. Bring in Aaron Rodgers and Adams from Green Bay, a fellow Pally alumni, Palo Alto High School. Extend Aziz, trade Greenlaw, trade Kittle for a first-round pick, re-sign Mostert with the Mitchell combo. If those 10 things happened, the 49ers would be set up for wild success in 2022. I love the optimism. I love the out-of-the-box thinking, Sean. If these things could happen, I'd be a happy Niner fan.
So, yeah, let's just go down a little bit real quick. I know we're at a $1.45 here, but they're not going to release Jimmy G. They can get something for him, whether it's a low-round pick or whatever. Yep. I think Saints make sense for him because the Saints quarterbacks have been very inconsistent. Yes. Sean Payton was able to be successful with Drew Brees and his noodle arm at the end of his career. Obviously, Drew Brees is a lot more intelligent with his reads in the short game.
I would throw out Pittsburgh as well as a potential landing spot.
And that's only one season that franchise has to pay for Jimmy, right? So, but you could cut him for 1.1, I think, or 1.5 dead money. Right. But I think they're going to end up trading him.
I agree.
But Bosa and Deebo both, extend them. That's fine. But their contract is still not up, so they're going to be playing off their rookie deals anyway. So the extension is not super huge. Anywhere. They're not going anywhere. Aaron Rodgers ain't coming to San Francisco. We had a chance to get him. It is what it is. Trey Lance wouldn't be enough to get Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay because they already have a first round pick that they spent that hasn't worked out for them already in Jordan Love. So, I don't really see that. Devontae Adams would be one that I could see there, but are you really going to be able to pay Devontae Adams and Deebo both over $20 million? Because Deebo is going to make $20 million and Adams is going to want to get his money too. So
Deebo's probably going to make 21, 22 a year. Adams is going to want at least that.
So, I see. I mean, I guess maybe you're saying, okay, Jimmy's making 20-something million. You just give it all to Adams for this season. I could see that. Trade Greenlaw. Yeah, maybe trade Greenlaw there. We better get more than a first for Kittle. I tell you that. Yeah. And I would bring like what we paid Mostert this year or what you could probably pay him $1 million. Yeah, I would definitely bring Mostert back again and have that combo.
I bring Mostert back if he's a complimentary back in that regard. I think the problem was moving into this year with Mostert scheduled to be your leading running back and Jason Verrett as your leading cornerback. Those were flawed strategies from the outset because of the injury histories. But I love all of these moves. I agree that I think it's unlikely you could get Aaron Rodgers in here. They're going to be looking for multiple first-round picks, and I would think they are going to get it. But I'll tell you what, if the Niners could swing this, I'd be a happy camper.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at it from a fact point of you already know he's elite. He wants to play till in his 40s. I think he wants to get at least one more, if not more. Maybe prove that he can win and be a little bit spiteful. He seems like that kind of human being where he'd want to show that he can win outside of Green Bay. And so, yeah, if you could get, I mean, I don't know how you would do it, but if you could get Trey Lance for A-Rod, but I don't think they would do Trey Lance and then give up more first round picks for a quarterback who's making $40-something million. And then all the cap space goes to A-Rod and we don't get to develop our team elsewhere.
Right. And the bottom line is we have Trey Lance, and he is still going to be bright and wonderful as our starting quarterback going forward. Yeah. No question. No question. All right, well, that's all the time we got. We went well over today, but it was too much fun talking football. Randon, it is always a pleasure to have you on here. Again, if you do not follow, please go check out Randon. His Twitter handle is down in the description below. And he works with Genuine Draft Media Group, specifically Genuine Draft SF. So go ahead and find those, subscribe, check out the podcast. You can find me on there, other wonderful guests. Randon, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, man. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Until next time, 49er faithful, keep an eye out for a special episode with me and the gentleman from Cincinnati. We're going to be talking Bengals. As usual, I will have my Wednesday mailbag. Throw your questions to me at 49ersmailbag@gmail.com. Until next time, here's to you, faithful.